In this lesson, we're going to solve quadratics using the method of your choice. All right, so first of all, let's go ahead and review all of the methods in which we have learned how to solve quadratics. We have solved quadratics by graphing. We have solved quadratics by factoring, by completing the square, with the quadratic formula, and by just using the fence method. And we did that. You can only do that if you've got just have only an x squared, remember. All right. All right, so which method would you use? Question number 1, we have 8x squared minus 25 is equal to 175. Notice in this instance, we just have an x squared. We don't have an x. And so probably the easiest way for us to solve this one would be by using the fence method. We would start by adding the 25, and then we'd have 8x squared is equal to 200, divide by 8, and we'd have that x squared is equal to 25, and then we would take the square root. So x would be equal to plus or minus 5. All right, so let's take a look at the next one. We have 5x squared plus 35x. You know, looking at this one, I think the easiest way for us to solve this one would be by factoring. Notice how you can factor out a 5 and an x. So the easiest way would be to factor. And so let's see what that would look like. We would then factor out the 5 and an x, and I'd have left x plus 7 then is equal to 0. And so then I would have the 5x is equal to 0, so x would be equal to 0. And then you'd have the x plus 7 is equal to 0, so x would be equal to negative 7. All right, so our next example, let's take a look and see if we're able to factor this one. Because if we can factor it, that's usually the fastest way to solve these. So I'm going to take a w and a w. And let's see here, I could have 9 times 5. Yep, that would equal 14. So 9 and a 5, this is equal to 0. And because I had a plus in the middle, I'd have plus 5. So I'm going to have w is equal to, I'm going to subtract the 5, so w is going to be equal to negative 5, and w will be equal to negative 9. So the fastest way for us to, or the easiest, would be for factoring. And here's our solutions. So for question number 4, we have w squared minus 7w plus 2. So let's take a look here, and let's see if we're able to just factor here. I'd have a w and a w, and then the only factors of 2 are 1 and 2, and I can't make us negative 7 there. So if you can't easily then factor this, then usually the best way for you to solve this one would be by using the quadratic formula, because really in any of these we could use a quadratic formula. It's just that it's not the most time-effective method, but if there's no other easy way to do it, then that's what we're going to use. And remember, for the quadratic formula, it's that, so a quadratic formula, and remember for that, you'd have that x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. All right, so then all over 2a. And so the first thing we would want to do is let's identify the a would be equal to 1, b would be equal to negative 7, and c is going to be equal to 2. All right, so negative 7, you're going to have 7 plus or minus, And then the square root, and again, remember you'd plug in the negative 7 squared minus 4 times a times, oops, a was 1 times 2, all over 2a, which is 2 times 1. And remember, do this piece first. All right, and so once you get done solving, you'll have w will end up equaling 0.3, and w will also equal then 6.7. All right, so for our next one, we have 3/4 times x plus 6 squared minus 10 is equal to 41. So let's go ahead and we need to kind of rearrange things here first. I'm going to add my 10, and we'll get 3/4 times x plus 6 squared then is equal to 51. And now what we're going to want to do then is, remember this 3/4 is multiplying that, so I'm going to divide. When dividing a fraction, remember, is the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. So we're going to do that on both sides. And I'll have my x plus 6 squared is equal to then, and you'll end up with 68. And then notice then what we're going to do here is we're going to take the square root of both sides. So we were solving this using the fence model. All right, so you're going to have x plus 6 is equal to then plus or minus 8.25. And then so x is going to be equal to, when you use 8.25 minus 6, and you'll get 2.25. And then x is equal to, so now you've got your negative 8.25. All right, so for number 6, let's go ahead and let's start by rearranging here. I'm going to minus the 7k and minus the 19. So I'm going to get negative 32k squared plus, oops, we have to minus 7. And we'll have 5k, and then minus 19, and that's going to be equal to 0. And now looking at this one, looking at all those different numbers in there, this one, the easiest way for you to do this one then would be the quadratic formula. All right, in our last problem that we're going to look at here, we have the area is equal to 91 meters squared, and we know that area is equal to base times height. And so let's take our x plus 2, and we'll times our 2x plus 3, and we know that that's going to be equal to 91. So I'm going to FOIL this, and once I do that, I'm going to get 2x squared plus 7x and plus 6 is equal to 91. And so I'm going to minus this 91, and we'll get 2x squared plus 7x minus 85 is equal to 0. All right, and now again, it's only wanting to know what method we would use. And looking at this one, I've got a lot going on in there. Again, I would use the quadratic formula for this. So in this lesson, we took a look at identifying the best way or the easiest way for you to solve quadratic equations.